The roots of the Sisters of Charity Federation lie in the strong belief in the sanctity of Elizabeth Seton by those who knew her and by those who followed through the years. Some examples of early testimony to the future saint's holiness include Reverend Simon Brute's belief in Elizabeth's holiness and significance as evidenced by his letter to the early sisters urging them to preserve her writings and artifacts. Elizabeth's son William's building in 1846 of the mortuary chapel at St. Joseph's to memorialize his mother, and the request in 1872 by Bishop James Roosevelt Bayley, Elizabeth's nephew and convert to Catholicism, to be buried near his aunt, remarking that he was convinced he owed his conversion to her prayers, and that while he might well be forgotten in the crypt of the Baltimore Cathedral, here he was sure the sisters would pray for him. The expansion of Sister of Charity communities through this period, in 1846, the founding of the Sisters of Charity of New York, 1850, the affiliation of the Sisters of Charity of St. Joseph's with the Daughters of Charity, and 1852, the founding of the Sisters of Charity of Cincinnati. The conflict-ridden circumstances surrounding these initial separations were a source of pain for all involved. Through the years, a hurtful spirit of separation continued between the Sisters of Charity and the Daughters of Charity. Despite this, the growing needs of the American and Canadian churches led dioceses to establish additional Sister of Charity communities. In 1856, the Sisters of Charity of Halifax. In 1859, the Sisters of Charity of St. Elizabeth. And in 1870, the Sisters of Charity of Seton Hill. Elizabeth's cause for canonization began August 22, 1882, when James Cardinal Gibbons, Archbishop of Baltimore and successor of James Roosevelt Bayley, after saying Mass at the mortuary chapel at St. Joseph's, turned to the sisters and said, "I have been inspired this morning to begin the cause of Mother Seton's canonization." This encouraged others, and the cause for canonization was taken up by thousands throughout the United States and in Rome. The Archdiocese of Baltimore led the way, undertaking extensive studies of Elizabeth's life and writings that paved the way for her cause for sainthood to be introduced to the Holy See. Pope Pius XII signed the decree of introduction of her cause February 28, 1940, 58 years later. This decree was the first official document ever issued in English by the Holy See. The following year, the Mother Seton Guild, the official organ of postulation, began working to promote devotion to Elizabeth Seton, to solicit prayers for her canonization, and to raise funds to support the efforts. The apostolic delegate, Archbishop Cincinnati, knowledgeable of the strained relations that existed between the Sisters and Daughters of Charity, suggested that collaboration was necessary to further the cause of canonization. In a spirit of reconciliation, Sister Isabel Toohey, Daughter of Charity and provincial of the Emmitsburg province, visited the major superiors of the 5 other Seton congregations. Asking pardon for any role the Sisters of Charity of St. Joseph's and the Daughters of Charity may have had in contributing to the strained relations, she invited them to meet to discuss collaborative strategies for the cause for canonization. The first meeting of the Conference of Mother Seton's Daughters, held at Emmitsburg in October 1947, proposed to strengthen the bond of union among the member congregations and to work together in advancing the cause of Mother Elizabeth Seton. Bishop John McNamara, Auxiliary Bishop of Baltimore and an avid supporter of the Seton cause, presided at the meeting. This was followed by semi-annual rotating meetings attended by the major superiors of each congregation, with Bishop McNamara presiding. In 1957, the Sacred Congregation of Rites approved the documentation of the cause, and on December 18, 1959, Pope John XXIII declared Elizabeth Ann Seton venerable. The two miracles required for beatification were approved in 1961. Pope John XXIII presided at the beatification ceremony March 17, 1963, proclaiming Elizabeth Ann Seton blessed. The Conference of Mother Seton's Daughters functioned with minimal organizational structure until 1965, when it became the Federation of the Daughters of Blessed Elizabeth Seton. This change responded to a directive of the Vatican II document Perfectae Caritatis that congregations possessing the same general spirit and origin form a federation for mutual support and development. Later, all of these efforts came to fruition when Pope Paul VI canonized Elizabeth Seton September 14, 1975, the International Year of Women and the bicentennial celebration in the United States. Striving for a spirit of simplicity, the Federation presented to Pope Paul a contribution of $200,000 to a World Hunger Fund, drawn on the Bank of New York, the bank with which Elizabeth's husband and father-in-law had been associated. Sister Hildegard Marie Mahoney, Sister of Charity of New Jersey and chair of the Federation, served as lector at the Canonization Mass. She was the first woman to read at a papal Eucharistic celebration. United States President Gerald R. Ford designated Sunday, September 14th as National St. Elizabeth Seton Day, recognizing her as the first American-born saint. Celebrations were held throughout the United States and Canada. After their successful collaboration on the cause of canonization, the Federation focused their efforts on their shared heritage and stewardship responsibility for maintaining and promulgating the charity charism. Since 1966, the directors of initial formation had been meeting regularly. These gatherings developed into the Company of Charity Formation Personnel, CCFP, which continues to function. For a time, there were annual conferences of Setonian colleges, and Federation members promoted celebrations in conjunction with the bicentennial of Elizabeth Seton's birth in 1974 and the bicentennial of the United States in 1976. Receiving a request for membership from the Sisters of Charity of Immaculate Conception from St. John, New Brunswick, the Federation faced the question of opening membership beyond the 6 Seton congregations. The SCICs joined the Federation in 1979. In 1982, the bylaws were amended to allow for 2 categories of membership, full and associate, which was later modified to provide equality of status among all members and to admit congregations founded in the Vincentian tradition of charity that did not have a direct connection to Elizabeth Seton. As membership in the Federation expanded, a greater appreciation of the essential interrelationship of Vincent de Paul, Louise de Marillac, and Elizabeth Seton developed. In 1986, the religious of the Notre Dame de Sacre-Cœur from Moncton, New Brunswick, a community that separated in 1924 from the St. John Sisters of Charity, became a member. The Vincentian Sisters of Charity of Pittsburgh joined the Federation in 1989, and in 1990, the Vincentian Sisters of Charity of Bedford, Ohio, became members. The Bedford Sisters joined with the Sisters of Charity of Cincinnati in 2004, and in 2008, the Pittsburgh Sisters joined the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth. In 1990, the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth, one of the oldest congregations in the United States, joined the Federation. They were followed in 1994 by the Sisters of Charity of Our Lady of Mercy from Charleston, South Carolina, and the Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth in 1995. The Sisters of St. Martha from Antigonish, Nova Scotia, joined in 2004. In 1996, the Federation adopted the name Sisters of Charity Federation in the Vincentian and Setonian tradition. 10 years later, the name was changed to the Sisters of Charity Federation, and a board was created to serve as the governing body. In 2007, the first full-time executive secretary, Sister Mary Ann Daly of New York, was appointed. She served in that position until 2011, when Sister Julie Cutter, daughter of Charity, was appointed. Some of the activities promoted by the Federation are publishing a newsletter and creating a website, publishing a communication manual, adopting a representative to the National Board of the Ladies of Charity, encouraging sisters from member communities to serve as docents at the Seton Shrine in Emmitsburg, and providing prayer services for the feast day celebrations of the founders. By the 1980s, the CCFP began a more active collaboration by sponsoring formation programs. Some of these have included Roots, Roots on the Road, Roots Revisited, Final Vow Retreats, the formation of a joint novitiate by the New York and New Jersey communities that in 1992 became a collaborative novitiate involving several other Federation members, Final Vow preparation programs, and the Way of Elizabeth, providing novices with the opportunity to visit Elizabeth Seton sites in New York, Baltimore, and Emmitsburg. Also beginning in the 1980s, members of the Federation congregations were invited to participate in an expanding menu of activities. In 1988, the first Charity A Shared Vision was held at Marillac Provincial House in St. Louis, where delegations from each community met for a week-long program to learn about our shared spirituality and heritage. This program rotated among member mother houses until it was discontinued in the mid-1990s. Charity Connections, reflection papers inviting members to reflect on the contemporary relevance of the Vincentian-Setonian tradition, was also initiated in 1988. The essays were published in booklet form as Living the Charity Charism in 1996 and 2008, with a third volume soon to follow. 3 scholarly symposia titled Seton Legacy were held in 1992, 1996-97, and 2001, designed to explore historical, cultural, and theological aspects of the Vincentian-Setonian tradition. Each was held in several locations to enable as many sisters as possible to attend. The proceedings of the first 2 meetings were published in Vincentian Heritage. The third were published as a separate booklet. In 1999, the Federation launched a new project Charity 2000 and beyond, to provide a series of ongoing formation opportunities. Shared ministry options, retreats, and workshops have been offered, and in 2003, a retreat was held at the birthplace of St. Vincent de Paul in Dax, France. About this same time, directors of associates from the member congregations began attending annual meetings of the CCFP. Associate programs have collaborated in sponsoring joint retreats and gatherings, and over the years have established closer connections. The Federation has also undertaken two major publication projects. A Vision of Service, a history of the Federation, was published during the 50th anniversary of the organization in 1997. Begun by Sister Hildegard Marie Mahoney, a sister from New Jersey, the project was completed by Sister Geraldine Anthony of Halifax. The collected writings of Elizabeth Seton is aimed at making the writings of Elizabeth Seton readily available to researchers and other interested parties. A committee under the leadership of co-editors Regina Bechtel, a Sister of Charity of New York, and Judith Metz, a Sister of Charity of Cincinnati, began the process of collecting, editing, and publishing the corpus of Elizabeth Seton's writings in 1993. 3 volumes were published in 2000, 2002, and 2006. The committee continues working to compile letters written to and about Elizabeth Seton. Federation members seek effective strategies for human development, promote investment in minority enterprises, and respond corporately to social justice issues by coordinating and networking among already existing ministries in the member congregations. In 2010, the House of Charity, staffed by sisters from 3 Federation communities, was established in New Orleans. They welcome groups of college students, those in formation, and sisters who participate in programs such as Nuns Build. In order to be more effective advocates for peace and justice issues, the Federation gained recognition as a non-governmental organization at the United Nations in 1997. Sister Maria Elena Dio, a Sister of Charity of Halifax, was the first representative. She was succeeded in 2007 by Sister Carol Jean Willey, a Sister of Cincinnati. Also working on Federation strategies in 2006, the 4 Canadian-based Federation members initiated the Maritime Project, advocating for women and children. The 200th anniversary of the 1809 founding of the Sisters of Charity in North America was celebrated in a number of ways by Federation communities. Members came together at St. Joseph's in Emmitsburg for a series of retreats and a ceremony conferring Seton Legacy of Charity bicentennial medals on selected individuals. In 2012, the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth celebrated their 200th anniversary with a series of programs as well. A new responsibility taken on by the Federation is the Seton Heritage Ministries at St. Joseph's in Emmitsburg. An interim board set up in 2009 was supplanted by the current board in 2011 with the goal of sustaining the Seton Shrine and related heritage ministries at the site of the founding of the charity mission in North America. In addition, the Federation continues to provide opportunities through the Grassroots Committee formed in 2009. They have coordinated regional meetings and retreats for Federation members who continue to be enriched, establish relationships, and deepen their understanding of the charity charism. And so the story continues.